Hi, it's Paul Anderson. I wanted to share a project I've been working on some learning mindsets. I'm just starting my 30th year in education, and about halfway through that career, I really started to adhere to this idea of explicit instruction, where if you want students to do inquiry or use practices or think in a specific way, that you define those terms and then give them explicit strategies so they can be successful in those areas. And I find that our belief systems, so these mindsets that we have, are also important. So I want to set up a set of mindsets that might be helpful. If you're like me, a lot of what I knew about mindsets in school was just growth versus fixed mindset based on the work of Carol Dweck and this idea that you have a good mindset, a growth, or a fixed mindset. It's not really the research that Dweck had done. She really saw students along a continuum from a more growth-minded to a fixed mindset. And if you could do a nurturing classroom where you help them and give them explicit strategies, you could move some of those students from more fixed to more growth mindset. A lot of the research wasn't really backed up by other scientists that have done that. And I think some of the things I worry about is just this idea of labels, that once you label students as good or bad or fixed or growth, you're kind of an old school, just like Mr. Strickland telling Marty McFly that he's got a bad attitude. You're kind of labeling students. And also when it comes to, for example, learning styles, like I'm a visual learner, I'm a kinesthetic learner, people tend to adhere to this is the label I am and not understanding that all of these different learning styles are important. I also think it's kind of weird to teach the negative. We don't teach system thinking and then we teach students that, oh, this is what a closed-mindedness is. And so this is how you move along that. So I don't think it's always good to teach the negative, but I do think it's super important to teach that positive. And so I've been working with a lot of other educators around this idea. And so thanks to everybody whose name is right here. A lot of them gave me new ideas, pushed me on my thinking. And so I came up with this draft set of mindsets kind of in these 4 categories. You have the mastery mindset where you're either practicing on something or you're performing. So I'm learning or understanding something new or I'm showing you what I know. When it comes to inquiry, you're either a curious mindset where you're trying to learn new things, or you're a skeptical mindset where you are maybe questioning new things or pushing back on new things. To be metacognitive, you're reflecting on what you've done in the past and how that might help you in the future. Whereas if you have a strategic mindset, you're more thinking about how do I plan to be successful in the future. And then a lot of the time when we're working in groups or independently, it's important to understand which of these mindsets are we. The nice thing about all these mindset pairs is that every one of these is positive. They're all good. You just have to be explicit and understand what the context is in which I'm using those. And so, for example, if I'm just introducing a new phenomena in a science lesson, it's really important that I'm learning new things, and so I should have a curious mindset. On the backs of these posters and cards, we have some behaviors. You should be asking questions, doing inquiry, and be just kind of valuing the unknown. Whereas, let's say I'm working in a science lab and the results I'm getting don't really mesh with another group. It's important for me to look at evidence, engage in a debate and maybe look at their perspective. And are we doing something different? Do they have something kind of going on that I don't really see? We also have these reflective mindsets. So as I'm getting a rubric back as a student, I want to think back on what have I done in the past? What have I done well? And what do I need to improve on so I can do better in the future? So feedback becomes really important. Versus a strategic mindset. So this idea that, we have a new project coming up, so I'm going to set up a bunch of deadlines. And you can kind of see in these cards that there is a continuum. So if you look in the middle, sometimes it's good to be highly reflective. Sometimes it's good to be highly strategic, or sometimes you kind of want a mixed mindset. Collaborative mindset's really important when you're working in a group. I think a lot of students don't know why we put them in groups. Is it to just save on materials? I want kids in groups because I want them to learn with each other and from each other. And so it's important to have a collaborative mindset where you're active listening to the people in your group, you're looking at new perspectives and you're working with each other versus maybe we're working individually. And so when I'm individual, I want to take ownership of my own learning. I'm going to act on my own. And lots of times in groups, I'll just find that kids are in a group, but they have this independent mindset. So they kind of take it over or they don't listen to anybody. I think it's just a mix in the mindsets. And then finally, you have this practicing mindset when I'm learning something new. So in science education, modeling instruction is all about that. Let me get my ideas out on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper and then see how those grow over time. Versus it's a performing mindset where maybe I have a summative assessment that I have to do well on, or even in class, I've got some knowledge and I want to be able to share what I know. So I'm going to contribute to classroom discussions and express what I know confidently. And then I might shift back into a practicing mindset as I learn new things. And so for me, I really, at this point, am at a performing mindset. I've been working on this for months, and I wanted to share with you some of the ideas that I have. What I'm about to do is go on the road and start working with teachers and students again. And so I'm going to shift back into a practicing mindset. So I've made a bunch of posters and cards. They kind of come in two forms. We have the continuum ones where it has both mindsets or the mindset pairs. We tried to hit language that's kind of K-12, especially on the front of the posters. And then we have more individual ones. So it's more like secondary, I think, that kind of language. But the idea is that you can just hold it up and say, for this next thing we're going to do in class, it's important that you're curious. And I want you to have a curiosity mindset. And here's some behaviors that you might want to have to do well with that. I'm also all in right now to having a collaborative mindset. So I'm going to put links to these different types of mindsets down below in the video description. So I'd love to get feedback. Feel free to download them. As always, everything I do is Creative Commons, so use it however you want. So leave comments in the section. I'd love to see if you're using them and how you're using them. But those are my learning mindsets, and I hope that's helpful.